Hi there. Welcome to Girls' Day at the State House, the virtual edition. I'm Destie with the Maine Women's Lobby Education Fund, and we're going to talk a bit about the legislative process or how a bill becomes a law. So we're going to walk all the way through the process from the time that an idea is born till the time a new law is born. Don't worry, it won't take too long. Let's start with the idea stage. Because bills aren't just born as bills, they start as ideas that people have. They're best when they come from a real problem or a real experience that real people are having out in their communities. And guess what? Anybody can have ideas and experiences, right? So ideas for bills come from a lot of different places. They might come from legislators themselves, but more often they come from citizens, people just like you, like your parents, your teachers, your community members. They come from organizations like mine or other organizations that we work with. Sometimes they come from government agencies. So the Department of Health and Human Services or the Transportation Department might recognize that they have a need or a real problem, and they'll bring that to the legislature. And sometimes ideas come from other states. You might see that Massachusetts or New Hampshire or Wyoming are doing interesting things with their laws, and so people get ideas from there too. But in general, when we think about how a bill becomes a law um, and the idea stage, there are always questions that we want to be asking ourselves from the very beginning all the way through the process till the very end. So as we go through, I'll be highlighting some of those questions that anybody who's a part of this process is usually asking themselves. And if they're not, maybe they should be. So in the idea stage, people want to be thinking about, is it a real problem? Would a law actually fix this problem? Sometimes we might have laws already on the books that people just don't know about, or if they know about, they're maybe not following it. And so in the idea stage, we really want to think about, is a law the best way to solve this problem? And why or why not? Next, we'll talk about the bill stage. So we've moved out of the idea and into, yep, we're ready to talk about a bill. The bill needs to be drafted. That means it needs to be written. And the drafting is a really important part of the process. You don't just go from an idea to a final product, just like when you're writing a paper for school. You have to have an idea, but the idea isn't good enough. You've got to write it all down, and the writing has to be sharp and well researched. So before we move out of the idea stage, we want to think about who's a good sponsor for this bill. A sponsor is a person who puts their name at the top of the bill. It's a legislator. And that they are committed to having their name on it and to helping shepherd the bill through the whole process. So it's a big commitment for a sponsor. You want to have a sponsor who really is committed to the issue, hopefully somebody who knows a bit about the issue and who wants to see it through to the end. Next, we want to write the bill text. That's the language that will become a law. So it's really important that it's well written. Luckily in Maine, we have the revisor's office. The revisor's office has nonpartisan staff whose only job is to help make sure that those ideas become good public policy, that they're well written, and that they live in the right part of the law. The books of laws are big, and so there are many places to put things. And the revisor's office are the folks who really know where things go and how to write them so that they're done effectively. Finally, we want to think about who co-sponsors might be. There's a primary person who puts their name on a bill, but lots of other people can put their name on it too. And so who might those people be? And then questions that we want to think of: where should the law go? Like, where in the law? What laws already exist that it could connect to? And who else would know more about this issue? Sometimes people who have ideas aren't always the people who know about the issue. And so we really want to take the time to talk to our friends, talk to colleagues, talk to people who are doing the work. Next stage is the bill hearing. So in the hearing stage, this is when the bill goes to a committee of people who legislators. The committee includes both people from the House of Representatives and people from the Senate, all sitting together, and it is usually what's called a committee of jurisdiction. That means that whole committee takes any bills or ideas on a certain topic. So there's a committee for transportation, there's a committee for agriculture, there's a committee for health and human services. There are many different kinds of committees, and they really focus in on just a couple of issues so that they can start to build up knowledge on the issue that they work on over the course of their 2 years while they're in office. So during the hearing stage, the bill goes to the committee. Almost every bill has a hearing. And the way those hearings work, the sponsor, that primary person, they present the bill to the committee members. Anybody who is a legislator who would like to speak in support of the bill then usually comes up. They stand at the podium, they talk to the legislators who are seated around the table, and they speak about why they support the bill. And then the general public is able to speak. First, usually those in support of a bill, then those who are opposed to the bill, and then they also take comments from people who are neither for nor against. That means that they probably have special information that they would like to bring. So a state agency might not support or oppose a bill, but they might have really special information because they are the people in charge of the highways and the bill is about highways. So a state agency would come and present information that's neither for nor against. During that time, anyone can come to speak. And so if you came to the State House, you could raise your hand when it's time and go right up to the podium and present your information. It usually is good if you also bring it in writing, but you certainly don't have to. It also is an opportunity for the legislators to hear from people from all across the spectrum, from regular citizens, lobbyists, organizations, anybody who's impacted by the bill. It's a really cool part of the process. Even having done this for many years, I always learn something during a hearing, and I'm always happy to hear from other Mainers. If there is a long line or a lot of people want to talk, you might be given a time limit, but that doesn't happen all the time. So some of the questions that people want to think about when they're looking at a hearing or preparing for a hearing, especially for somebody like me, where we go to testify pretty often on bills, I always want to be thinking about who else might be in support of this issue, who might be opposed to the issue and why. Is there an opportunity that we might be able to come to the middle, a compromise on the issue? And then what are the stories or information or pieces of data that the committee needs to hear in order to really understand the issue? This is also a place where folks can really get involved. So you can submit your testimony in writing, you can deliver it in person, as I said, you can call or write to your representatives if they're on the committee, and you can watch all of these hearings. They're broadcast live or they're recorded live. So you can just click into the State House website and listen to all of them. I'll show you how at the end of this session, how you can go find these recordings. So next step, the committee votes. And when the committee votes to, whoops, let's see, I've ruined it. Okay, so when the committee votes, they usually take time for a work session first so that they can really get down into the nitty-gritty details of a bill. And In a work session, they are looking at a lot of different information, all of the testimony that was brought. They might have a committee researcher who brings them extra information. So they don't just take the testimony and then have a vote. They take the testimony, then they have a work session where they work on it, and then they do a vote. Whatever happens with that vote, the next step is to go out to the full House and Senate. So the committee makes their recommendation, and then the House or the Senate takes up the bill depending on who the bill's sponsor was. So if the bill's sponsor was a member of the House of Representatives, first the bill goes there. If it passes the House of Representatives by more than 50%, next up, it goes over to the Senate. And it happens just the opposite way if the sponsor is originally from the Senate. First to the Senate, if it passes there, it goes to the House. But if it goes to the House and they don't pass it by 50%, that's the end of the bill. And same with the other way. First goes to the Senate and they don't pass it, that's the end. So let's say, though, that they do pass the bill, both the House and the Senate. The next step is it goes to the governor for a signature. So we've finished the House, we've finished the Senate, they've crossed over, and now it goes to the governor. And generally, the governor knows how much work goes into these bills. And so the governor typically respects the vote of the legislature. That doesn't always happen, though. So sometimes the governor vetoes the bill. If they veto the bill, it has to go back to the House and Senate. And then the House and the Senate both have to vote again to see if they really want that bill to happen. And if they do, if they're able to override the governor's veto. An override vote is not a 50% vote, it's a 2/3 vote. So that means, 66 people have to, out of 100, need to say yes. It's a lot more than 50. If they do both have a 2/3 vote, then it overrides the governor's veto and it goes back and it becomes a law. But if it goes to one and they're not able to override with a 2/3 vote, that's the end of the bill. So there are a lot of steps that it has to go through in order to become a law. But if it makes it all the way through that process and the governor signs it, or sometimes if the governor lets it become a law without their signature, but they haven't vetoed it, a new law is born. It usually takes about 90 days for it to become a law. You don't just get the signature and then all of a sudden in that moment it's a law, because all of the books need to be updated, the website needs to be uploaded, depending on who's in charge of the law. If it's a criminal law and like police and district attorneys are sort of in control of managing that new law, they need to know about it. So it takes a little while for a new law to be implemented, typically about 90 days. And then at every stage in that process, every legislator, every person working on the bill, the governor, should all be asking themselves, who is helped by this law? Who would be harmed potentially by this law? Are there unintended side effects? If you get rid of the speed limit, is there an unintended side effect that you didn't plan for about people now driving faster or slower than they used to? Do people have all of the tools that they need in order for this law to actually become a reality? Do some people have barriers to accessing the new law or to being able to make the new law work? It's a lot of questions that all of the folks should be thinking about as they go through the process, because once we do get a new law, we really want it to be the right law and we want it to work for people. So that's a lot of different steps, but At most of these stages, there's an opportunity for you to be involved. And the first one is in that idea section. So, like I said, ideas are best when they come from real people with real problems. And you are a real person and you may have real problems. You may have real experiences. You may have worked with the law and it has affected you in a positive or a negative way. You can share those things with your local legislator. And you never know, the stories that you bring to a legislator might help get a new law to be passed, or at least a bill that could change the lives of people in Maine. The other place, next place where you can really have a big impact as a citizen is during the hearing. As I said, there are a lot of different ways to be involved in a hearing. And if you're ever interested, you certainly can go to the State House. They're all public proceedings. If you see a committee in session, you can peek your head in. It's the people's house. That's one of my favorite parts about working there. You really are welcome. If that feels a little intimidating, you can call most sort of public groups like the Maine Women's Lobby Education Fund, and we would be happy to take you around and let you shadow us for the day. The next place where you can have an impact or engage with the process is reaching out to your local senator or your local member of the House of Representatives, or even the full legislature if you want them to vote a certain way. You can reach out to the governor. If you know a bill is headed to the governor, you can let them know that you would like them to support the bill or to oppose the bill. And then once a new law is on the books, it's probably going to impact your life. And so you can make observations, you can share your stories, and you can help bring information back to the legislature about how that law has impacted you to help make sure that it is working as well as it can. Because it's a constant process. Making the law is never done. It's always started and improved and revised and updated. How you can affect public policy is lots of different ways, some of which we've already talked about. So you can have ideas, you can write to your legislature, you can call your legislator. You can also vote. Once you're 18, you can vote in every election from dog catcher to city council to legislator for your state to president. And it's a really important responsibility, as I'm sure you know. You can also talk not only to legislators, but to candidates, to people in your community, to people who are in a position of making small policies, like policies for organizations. Your principal makes policies for your school all the time. You have a voice and you can talk to those folks about the issues that matter to you. You can write not only to the legislature, but on social media, in newspapers, your local newspaper or your school newspaper. You can start a blog. Getting your voice out there does not have to be actually speaking. There are lots and lots of ways to communicate your ideas to the public. You can learn more about how issues affect you, and you can learn more about tools to help get involved. But no matter what, if you care about these issues, there's always an opportunity for you to act, for you to engage, and for you to take the next step to build really effective and useful public policy that impacts your life. I also want to show you a couple of the tools that are available to you. So this is the Maine legislative website. You can see up at the top, it's legislature.maine.gov. But if you go there, there are so many tools and resources for you if you're interested in this. Couple of the fun ones. So the Senate Home, you see this little tab that says the Senate video. So if you go to the Senate Home, you learn more about the Senate. You learn about when they're meeting, when they all come together as a group, and you can get video, real-time video and recording of all of the work that the full Senate gets up to. Also, that's the same for the House over here. So you can watch the House chamber proceedings. You can go back and look at recordings of the House chamber proceedings. And then right here in the middle, the committees. The committees do really important work. And so the committees are where I often go to hear hearings. If I can't make it to a hearing, I listen to it in audio in real time so that I know what's happening. And you can do all of that right through this link. You can also find out who's on the committees. Your local legislator might be on a committee that really matters to you. And that's pretty fun to know. I've never met a legislator who said that they wouldn't be interested in getting a letter or talking to somebody who lives in their district, even if they're not old enough to vote. Like, they're doing that work because they care about these issues, and so they really want to hear from you. The last place I'd point you to is this bill search. So most people, who are regular citizens don't necessarily know the number of the bills that they're looking for. But in this advanced search, you can type in keywords or title names for different issues. You can put in years if you're interested in this year. But you can also go back over many different years. And it's a great way to go read about the bills that are on the table right now and the bills that have happened in history. There's also below this, if you scroll down on the page, the place where you can submit testimony in writing, which is really helpful. That way it takes all of the guessing out of how to get testimony to a committee. You just click on the link and you upload your testimony and it sends it to the committee. And then on the other end, the committee has a clerk that takes care of all of that and makes sure that the committee members get the testimony that you've submitted. The other really important tool, making sure you actually just know who your legislators are. So this is Open States, openstates.org. And all you do is put in your address and it lets you know all of your elected officials. It's a really great tool so that you can get the elected officials from state rep, state senate, governor, and all of our federal delegation that represents Maine and DC. So I think that's everything for now, but I'm really glad that you could join me and I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about these things, you can always reach out to us through our website, mainewomen.org. Thank you.